Today I'm bringing you the all-new 2022 Mazda CX-50. We're going to do a little exterior walk around, then we'll do in the inside, and then get into the car, start driving it, answer your questions about this new mid-size crossover from Mazda. The CX-50 exists alongside of their best-selling CX-5 model. It carries the same goods. It has the turbo engine in here, the 2.5 liter Skyactiv G, up to 256 horsepower and up to 320 pound-feet of torque if you put the 93 octane in it. The looks of this vehicle are definitely going to throw you for a loop because it looks very unlike anything Mazda has in the market, at least here in the United States. It might be somewhat similar in terms of overall design actually as the CX-60 overseas. We'll begin the CX-70 and then a CX-90 as well in a couple years. But let's get back to this model. When I first saw this car, I couldn't believe how much longer it is than the CX-5. I believe it's around 5 inches longer, but it looks way longer than that because it is like 2 inches shorter. So you have less headroom in this model. You have a much longer wheelbase as well. This thing looks a little bit more like a Subaru Outback than it does like a Mazda CX-5 in some ways. Now this is the top of the line turbo model Premium Plus package that has all the goodies on it, including the 20-inch wheels as we get around to the back. All CX-50s are all-wheel drive. All Mazda crossovers are all-wheel drive nowadays. And just looking at this vehicle from the back, you can just see how much of a wider stance it has and even depicts over the CX-5 its tenured stablemate in the Mazda lineup. But let's get inside real quick, go over some of the details in here. This top of the line model sounds pretty good when you close the door. The materials on the door are hit and miss. This is a hit. This leather trim right here with this bronze stitching that goes all the way across the dash, and you also see it on the seats here. It is a beautiful touch and it's a very unique touch, and it's exclusive to this CX-50. But this material up top, yes, it's soft, but it doesn't feel that high quality. The Bose sound speaker, it feels like it could fall off. You know, it's not that well adhered, and this is the first model year of this run. Everything else feels pretty good in terms of materials. I do have hard touch here. I wish I would have had a little bit more soft touch to pad my knee while I'm driving. Behind the steering wheel, we have the traditional digital speedometer with miles per gallon. Before I was idling, I had 26 miles per gallon. That's on the best case scenario. More than likely, you're going to be in the low 20s on this vehicle. Traditional tachometer over here, analog, as well as analog heat and fuel gauges. Steering wheel feels like any other Mazda steering wheel, which is a good thing for the most part. I am blinded at times by this highly reflective aluminum on the steering wheel and around the vents. The vents seem like they're kind of tucked behind the steering wheel, but they actually do a good job cooling me down. We have this little hidden vent here in the middle for the passenger, and you have that big one at the end. This is not a touchscreen. This is just tacked on top. It is a beautiful screen. Unfortunately, you have to do everything through the rotary dial, and once I have my radio stations up, I don't look at the screen very much. Unfortunately, I can't use the buttons on the steering wheel to change my presets. I have to twist, and then you can see my presets, and I have to twist again and then press down. So just getting to the next preset is a 3-step process compared to just pressing a button, which I can't do. It won't let me do it with this on the steering wheel. Anyways, this is very similar here to what we see in the Mazda 3 CX-30 because this vehicle is essentially a much larger version of those vehicles. It's built on the same platform. It has that torsion beer rear suspension, but this being the top line model, we have pretty effective ventilated seats here. Heated seats get real hot as well, and you have a heated steering wheel. Behind the rotary dial is a wireless phone charger. Does a great job charging my phone. I like how it's at an angle, so my phone just kind of sits in there. I have my drag meter in here. We'll do some 0 to 60s in a little bit. A couple USB ports in here, and then we're going to get in the back seat, as this vehicle should give us a good amount of back seat room. And here's one of the things about this rear door. It does not sound very quality or feel very quality when I close it. How about on the inside? No, it feels and sounds pretty cheap. Now keep in mind, first production year, I'm not expecting things to be perfect. Hard touch plastic up here, soft touch down here, which is unfortunate because This would be the place you want soft touch, because that's where passengers could rest their arms, not in this area. But I do have a nice soft touch here though. Handles as well as the front, they're pretty cheap feeling. That's unfortunate because you're going to be using them a lot. Nice soft back leather material here on the back of the seat. I do appreciate that. At 6'1", I have probably 2 to 3 inches of knee room, which is great. Heated seats on this model, on the outboard seats. A couple more USBs down here. I like the vents as well, just one map pocket in the back. I love the additional stitching on these rear seats back here to continue the high quality front seats. A couple cup holders and nice view of that panoramic sunroof. I feel like I'm sitting pretty high. I don't have that much headroom, and that's where the CX-5 really trumps this vehicle in terms of headroom. So if you're much taller than 6'1", you might start having headroom issues in this vehicle. The back has a bunch of cargo space as well as a spare tire. I'm not going to get back there, but I'll show you some B-roll. I think it's time to start driving the Mazda CX-50. As I back out the review spot, you might be able to see that we have a very high quality 360 camera here, and this vehicle, so you can see I'm a little bit off-road. This vehicle is really designed to attack that Subaru crowd, that off-road, the active lifestyle. We got me drive here. We're going to make sure it's in sport. I'm going to torque brake it to about 2300 and go. Launches pretty hard there. Lots of traction. That 6-speed automatic doing a good job in there. 60. I do really love this engine combination with the 6-speed auto and the turbo 4-cylinder. The torque is intoxicating in the Mazda lineup with this setup. 0 to 60 in 7.58. Not bad at all, Mazda. And that's kind of what I would be expecting. Mid to low 7s. In perfect conditions, you can probably get it closer to 7. But for everyday usage right there, that's kind of realistic. And we're going to hit the brakes hard. And that's something that's kind of strange. It took me a little bit to get used to in this vehicle. The initial brake response is not very strong. You kind of have to get into the brake a little bit, but it is fairly linear. Get back into the gas, just pedal down. I'm still in sport mode. Engine sounds good too. You can hear a little bit of turbo whine as well. It's pretty satisfactory. Now, this Me drive, that it reminds me of like Nintendo Mii's from the Wii days. I don't know. Anyways, if I put it back into normal, there's also a third mode, off-road. Now, going about 60 miles an hour, it's pretty quiet. I didn't really notice those cars passing me in terms of like an abruptive noise. It's a very pleasant experience in here, up to speed. Suspension, yes, I know it has the rear torsion beam, but I feel like it's pretty well sorted out in here. It's not the smoothest ride, and the steering is extremely stiff in this car, which I'm actually quite fond of. But I know many people are not going to be fond of the really tight and stiff steering, but I think it feels good in this vehicle. And this is a part of the road that is pretty loud. And I know one of you was asking, like, am I hearing any rattles in this vehicle? I hear something in the sunroof area that feels like a real high-pitched little creak or rattle noise. And when I was driving in town, I was hitting some bumps. I was hearing like what sounded like the rear hatch making a weird vibration sort of noise. So I would say acceptable for its class. I mean, I just drove the RDX last week, the refresh. That vehicle cost, I don't know, like 10 grand more than this car, and I was getting a rattle around the A-pillar. So I still don't like any rattles in any new cars, and I find it somewhat unacceptable, but that's just the way it is. Also, one of you was asking about, you know, the safety features on this car, and they are typical Mazda. They're not very good in my opinion. When I'm using radar cruise control with stop and go traffic, it like slams on the brakes, but if you have the setting, the radar cruise control setting, too far away, then it does a good job braking, but adversely it has a really slow takeoff trying to keep up with traffic. So using it for stop and go traffic, I really don't recommend. But out on the highway, it's fine, and fine enough. It's going to keep you distance behind the car. One of the things about the safety system that doesn't make me happy is the lane keep assist or the steering assist. Like, it hardly ever locks on, and the steering wheel rarely turns green. So I'm just going to turn it on right now. I don't know if you can see on the heads-up display, but it has the green locked in at the speed behind this Volvo, and the steering, like, this is a perfect environment. I'm just going straight. The lines are extremely visible, and the steering is not locked in, and I'm just drifting off to the side, and then it just kind of ping pongs me back in, and that's not a good thing because there's an Alfa Romeo in my blind spot. And yeah, the green steering wheel never turns green, so the safety features in here are definitely subpar compared to what's out there on the market. Over on Instagram, login is asking about, are the seats comfortable? And I'm happy to report that they are comfortable, and they feel a lot better than they do in the CX-5. So I give up a little bit of headroom here, which I feel like I have an okay amount, but if you're much taller, like I said, in a 6'1", it might not be that great of an experience. The CX-5 seats are so much stiffer than this, and I'm very comfortable here. I feel like it could be in a long trip, and I can't really sling this thing into the corner because there's traffic in front of me, like, but I usually take that pretty hard. And this is a good place actually for the suspension, because this is really rough area. And I feel like it's done an incredible job overall, even like not even counting that this is a torsion beam. So like I feel like the front suspension is actually a little bit more stiff than the rear suspension, which is surprising with the torsion beam setup. So Mazda's done a little bit of magic here compared to like the CX-30 or the Mazda 3 that is riding on this same platform. Well done. Hey guys, I've been driving this vehicle a little bit more. Just wanted to give you an update on the ride quality. And the roads here in Florida, as you guys know in my videos at least, they're nearly perfect. And this road right here seems pretty loud, and you get a little harshness coming from the road, not only in the steering wheel, but you feel in the seats, you hear it in the cabin. So if you're not in an absolutely perfect road, you probably are going to feel and hear a little bit of the harshness and vibration coming through the vehicle. Alex is great is asking about how this compares to the CX-5 in terms of comfort. Well, I kind of answered that, but in terms of interior dimensions and overall dimensions, this vehicle is a lot bigger on the outside and not that much bigger on the inside. In fact, like I mentioned, you're giving up a lot of headroom compared to that vehicle. The rear legroom is, at least on paper, virtually identical. So you're not actually gaining that much. Now you are gaining better seats. These seats are a lot better than the CX-5s in my opinion. But in terms of interior quality and aesthetics, I feel like it's right there with the CX-5, which it should be. It's coming from the same brand. I know this is built in Alabama alongside the Toyota Corolla Cross at the new plant in Huntsville. So it is cool to see this being produced here stateside. And I would have to say overall the quality is very good, and I expect it to get better. Like this is early production of a first model year, so it's only going to get better from here. And for the most part, it is pretty good, other than the rear door closing, and you know, this Bose speaker could be put on a little bit better. They're minor things, but overall I feel very happy with the overall build quality. Getting into the brakes hard again. Yeah, just a lot of travel, but there is a good amount of feedback as you bury your foot into the brake there. Mark is wondering if this is worth it over the Subaru offerings. And I think it is, especially if you're looking for a little bit more performance. Okay, this is not good. I gotta let this Volvo in. The Subaru, come on, Volvo. Like, what are you doing? I gave you so much time to get over. Cripes. Oh, there's a MX-5 behind me. I actually wish I was in that car. But anyways, is it worth it over Subaru's offerings? And the answer is yes, if you're looking for a little bit better quality materials, a nicely designed interior, as well as if you like the exterior. That's definitely subjective, but the interior is definitely nicer than the Subaru offerings. And I'll take this turbo with 6-speed over the turbo CVT that we see in the Subaru offerings as well. How would I feel taking this off-road? Well, I would rather be in a Subaru off-road, but I am going to take this off-road in a little bit, and that might change my opinion. Big procrastinators asking about what if Mazda brings back like the Mazda 5, a little MPV minivan based off this platform. I would love it. I want more minivans on the market because the minivan market just has too few players in it. And right now Toyota is killing it in the minivan market with their hybrid system. But I would love to see Mazda bring that vehicle back, the Mazda 5. I thought it had a real cool looks to it, and I know there are variants that had a 5-speed manual if I remember correctly. So yeah, a little bit of nostalgia wants it back, and we don't have a true minivan market. Oliver's asking about fuel economy. It's down to about 24 miles per gallon. I think 22 to 24, 25 is probably best case scenario for this vehicle. Gabrielle is asking if this is a better option than the Acura RDX or maybe the Lexus NX. And I would say yes, if you don't want to spend that much money. Those vehicles cost quite a bit more, probably about 10 grand more. This is not quite on the same quality in terms of materials or build quality, but it's getting better. It's getting closer to what those vehicles have. In terms of performance, it's right there in my opinion. I think it's just as good as the, and maybe not in terms of handling, because this vehicle feels more boaty and long and big compared to the NX especially. But in terms of engine performance, yes, it hasn't, can keep up with the turbo engines from the three big luxury Infiniti, Acura, and Lexus turbo engines. So, but this is really tailored for off-roading. Well, that's what Mazda is kind of marketing it towards, kind of the rugged adventurous crowd out there. And I'm going to put the Mi Drive into off-road, and we have this little hard packed sand initially, but then it turns into loose sand up here. I've taken the Pro 4X Frontier out here, that made short work of it. I've taken a Subaru out here, the Wilderness, and that made short work of it. So I'm pretty excited to see what this vehicle is going to do in this loose sand. And so far it's doing really well. I'm going to flip it a U-turn here. And I do wish I had a little bit more ground clearance. There was a spot back there where I bottomed out in some deep tire ruts, but I'm just going to floor it here. I don't think it quite does as well as like the Subaru Forester Wilderness, if I remember correctly, but it's actually still really fun. And just plowing my way through the sand, there it goes, it finds its way back into those ruts. It is quite capable. Now the suspension though, I do feel its limitations actually out here on the off-road with that torsion beam, but overall I'm actually really impressed, and that's probably going to be way more difficult and way more demanding than the average person's needs for this vehicle. So I'm going to put it back into normal mode here, and we might do a little bit more light off-roading, but nothing like that again. Cookie Monza is asking about fuel tank capacity. This is just a little bit bigger than the CX-5, so I'll go ahead and put that up on the screen for you. Range is going to be very similar. Fuel economy will be very similar as well. Jimmy has a tough question. If I was a Mazda CEO, would I keep the CX-50 or the CX-5? Now, they're going to keep both of them in the lineup. At least that's what Mazda has told us. I actually prefer the CX-5 over this vehicle. But if I was a CEO, I would say the CX-50 is better for the American market and the CX-5 is better for European and Asian markets. I just like how compact the CX-5 is. I like the tallness of it. It's easier to maneuver. It just does, the proportions look nailed down. On this vehicle in pictures, it looks great and it looks really cool. But when you see it in person, it seems extraordinarily large. And I just would prefer to have the CX-5 for everyday use. Now, if this gets a hybrid and the CX-5 doesn't, then yeah, I would be picking this vehicle, especially with today's gas prices. Somebody had a fire out here, a couple fires. These college kids coming out here and having fires and burning stuff. You never know. Okay, little off-road portion here. Oh, okay. But I want to see what you guys have to say. If you're the CEO of Mazda and you had to pick one or the other, what would you pick for your everyday life, and what would you pick for the American market? For me, there are two different answers. Put it back in off-road mode, just running over some tall grass. MLive Free is asking about would I pick this over the Integra? I would pick the Integra. I never do off-roading. The Integra has enough capability for me. I'm gonna find this road over here. I don't need all-wheel drive in Florida, and I like the fuel economy of 35 to 40 miles per gallon in the Integra, and I like the 6-speed manual. So yes, and it's a lot more fun to drive. I can just throw that vehicle around. This thing feels like a boat. So yeah, I know that's apples to oranges comparison, But there's your answer. I'd rather have the Integra 6-speed A-Spec. Well, I think I'm going to summarize the CX-50. I think it's going to be a good seller for the American market, especially when they bring the hybrid in. That's going to bring a whole new segment of buyers into this prospective vehicle here. I guess I'm going to turn it back into normal mode. It looks pretty cool, but I like the more reserved and less rugged looks of the CX-5. This doesn't have like the paint matched wheel arches, for example, that I prefer on other models in the Mazda lineup. So in terms of looks, there are some things I really like about it, and there's some things that just seem a little bit off with the proportions of this vehicle. To me, the proportions almost seem like the CX-60, which is a rear-wheel drive vehicle, and this is a front-wheel drive based all-wheel drive system. So totally different lineup, but the proportions on here scream rear-wheel drive setup, even though it's front-wheel drive. Anyways, I really like the interior design. The materials could be a little bit better, especially in the doors on the front and back seat, but overall I'm very pleased with the interior. Infotainment is typical Mazda. It's not my cup of tea. Sound system in here is pretty good though, and even when you crank it, it gets really loud. The bass is a little lacking, but overall the Bose sound system is pretty decent in here. Safety features are okay at best. Radar cruise control is probably the best safety feature on here, but I wouldn't use it for stop and go traffic like I mentioned earlier, and the lane keep assist and lane centering is all but useless. And I haven't talked much about the heads-up display. It gives you a lot of information. It's just really small. I don't have any of that double vision non-uniformity look to it. It looks very solid, but I just wish it was higher, bigger font, and it just seems really far away from me as the driver. But I'm signing up for the Mazda CX-50. Can't wait for the hybrid powertrain to come sometime in the next year or two. I think that's going to really breathe some life into this vehicle and into the Mazda's efficiency, because Mazda really doesn't have any hybrids in their lineup. They have the full EV MX-30, which is going to get the rotary range extender sometime, but really they could benefit massively from having a hybrid in their lineup, and this vehicle would be a perfect candidate for it, as it will definitely scale largely, because Mazda wants to make or they'll have capacity for 150,000 units out of that plant in Alabama where this is made. And production for Mazdas is back in the old United States of America, which is pretty exciting as well with this CX-50. It's a really good vehicle overall. I like the CX-5 a little bit better, but they're both good vehicles, and it's good to have options. But signing out from the Mazda CX-50. Catch you in the next one. Stay tuned for more Mazda news and reviews. Have a wonderful day. Take care of yourselves, and